Hello, friends. Welcome to National Park Mysteries. 10 more unsolved national park disappearances. As we continue this series, we will also include disappearances that are near or just outside national parks. When we first started this series, we wanted to only focus on disappearances within our national parks. However, we have noticed a large amount of disappearances that have happened just outside or near national parks as well. In our opinion, these disappearances are just as important and should be included in future episodes. So, in the future, when we cover a disappearance that is near or outside of a national park, we will be sure to note what national park is closest, so there is a frame of reference. With that said, let's get started. Number 10. Janet Castrillon Fiorniforn. Year old Janet Castrillon was last seen on June 19, 2015, when she vanished from a camping trip in the Chiricahua Mountains in southern Arizona with her parents, Dr. Eduardo and Lydia Castrillon, all of Las Cruces Dude. Janet, the oldest of 4 siblings, suffered a traumatic brain injury in a car accident in 1988 when she was 18 years old, causing memory problems and partial blindness. At the time of the crash, she had just completed her first semester at New Mexico State University, where she was studying computer science. Janet was last seen outside a campground bathroom in Rustler Park. It is a wildflower-carpeted meadow high in the Chiricahua Mountains, rimmed with Douglas fir and ponderosa pine. The family arrived at the Rustler Park campground between 1:30 and 2:00 p.m., and when they finished setting up their camp, Eduardo made lunch for his family of quesadillas, beans, and rice around 4 p.m. Janet and her mother then walked about 1,000 feet from their motorhome, down a curved path to the pay station, where Janet deposited the payment envelope. About 300 feet from the pay station, Lydia decided to go to the bathroom, but Janet didn't need the restroom, so she stayed behind. Janet was going to wait outside, but when her mother came out of the bathroom, she was gone. Lydia estimated that she was in the bathroom only for a few minutes, and soon became worried when she returned to the motorhome and discovered Janet was not there. Update. At the time we were investigating cases for this episode, Janet was still missing. However, with heavy hearts, we must report that her remains were found in a remote area of Arizona in September of 2019. DNA confirmed the remains were Janet's, and her family was notified immediately. We would like to send our thoughts and prayers to the family. May Janet rest in peace. Number 9. Rachel Lakoduk. 28-year-old Rachel Lakoduk was last seen on October 16, 2019, when she left home for an overnight hike to a cabin in Hidden Lake Lookout in the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest in the state of Washington. On October 17, 2019, the Skagit County Sheriff's Office started a full-scale search and rescue mission. During the search, Rachel's car was located at the trailhead. In addition, 2 hikers came forward and said they witnessed Rachel on the trail leading up to Hidden Lake Lookout. The 2 hikers also stated that heavy snow began to fall around the same time they witnessed Rachel on the trail. This sighting gave Rachel's family hope that she had made it to the lookout and found shelter in the cabin, but when search and rescue workers finally reached the lookout, there was no sign or evidence that Rachel ever made it that far. During the search on October 17, 2019, a search and rescue employee slipped and fell over 100 feet. The search and rescue employee used his axe and plunged to self-arrest into the mountainside to save his fall. The employee survived the fall but fractured his elbow and injured his hip and thigh, and ultimately had to be rescued from the mountainside by helicopter. Then on October 28, 2019, the search and rescue effort transitioned to a recovery effort, after searchers and the hiker's family gave up all hope of finding her alive. On October 30, 2019, Skagit County Sheriff's Office said the recovery efforts had been put on hold due to snow and weather conditions in the mountains. However, the recovery effort for Rachel resumed in November with air and ground searches. On November 10th, the recovery efforts for Rachel were completely called off. The recovery efforts to locate Rachel will resume in the spring of 2020. The Skagit County Sheriff's Office prohibited any private searches for Rachel due to the hazardous icy conditions and continued inclement weather conditions. Once the family has the approval from the Sheriff's Office, they will organize their own recovery searches and efforts to find Rachel. If you have any information regarding Rachel's disappearance, please call the Skagit County Sheriff's Office at 360-416-1911. Number 8. Catherine Ann Truitt, 37-year-old Catherine Ann Truitt was last seen by her roommate at their residence in Alameda, California on January 6, 2010. On January 9th, her tan 2003 Ford Ranger pickup truck was found by federal park rangers at McClure's Beach at Point Reyes National Seashore in Marin County, California. 2 of her dogs were inside the truck. A third was leashed to a rock nearby. Catherine was an avid hiker and had gone on many day trips to Point Reyes and was very familiar with the area. Catherine is a graduate of the California Culinary Academy and worked as a pastry chef in various restaurants before she injured her neck on the job and was left disabled. She took walks as a way of controlling her chronic pain, took classes in computer graphics, and taught art to children. On January 10, 2003, when Catherine's truck had not moved, rangers called in search and rescue. The search included upwards of 80 people on foot and at sea. Search and rescue teams from various jurisdictions were called in to conduct the search but were unable to locate Catherine. The surf at the time Catherine was visiting the area was high and very rough. Catherine's family formally made a missing persons report with Alameda Police Department on January 11, 2010. There was no indication of foul play in the immediate area of where Catherine's truck was parked. Search and rescue continued the search for Catherine. Then, on January 13, 2003, all search efforts were called off. Park officials believe that Catherine got into a mishap while hiking at the park, or may have been swept to sea during high tide and rough seas. Foul play is not suspected, and 10 years later, Catherine remains missing. If you have any information regarding Catherine Ann Truitt's disappearance, please call Alameda Police at 510-337-8340 or the National Park Service at 415-464-5170. Number 7. Christopher Chrissa Sylvia Trinidad. 8-year-old Chris Sylvia was last heard from on February 16, 2015 when he spoke with his roommate and asked him to meet him at a Buddhist temple in Warner Springs, California the next day. Chris's roommate went to the designated spot at the agreed-upon time, but Chris never showed up. At first, his roommate assumed he'd just decided not to go to the temple after all. But when the roommate had not heard anything from Chris the following day, he reported him missing. Chris left his home on February 13, 2015, and his goal was to hike the Pacific Crest Trail from Anza Borrego in Riverside County, California south to Campo, near the U.S.-Mexican border in San Diego County, California. He left on his trip wearing green camouflage pants, a dark fleece jacket, and brown hiking boots. More than 30 volunteers from various agencies gave their time and skills to help in the search. Search crews included people from Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Riverside, and Orange counties. Other hikers found his identification, sleeping bag, backpack, and other belongings lying in an open area near the temple. Chris's mother Nancy Sylvia said, "He is an experienced outdoors man, and it would be uncharacteristic for him to go hiking alone or to leave his gear behind." The San Diego County Sheriff's Department said Chris's disappearance is not a criminal investigation. Multiple searches of the area turned up no sign of Chris, and he remains missing. If you have any information regarding Christopher Sylvia's disappearance, please contact the San Diego County Sheriff's Department at 858-565-5200. Number 6. Jesus Rivera. Or Jesus Rivera Sor was last seen on March 11, 2019 in Running Springs, California, inside the San Bernardino National Forest. Jesus came to Running Springs for a job on Catalina Drive. He carpooled with another worker coming from Victorville. The man working with Jesus said he was having a panic attack the evening of March 11th and stepped outside for some air. When he did not return a little bit later, the man looked for him and could not find him anywhere. A missing persons report was filed. However, law enforcement said they consider this a voluntary missing person due to his age. Jesus is married with children and does not have a history of leaving for any period of time. He is diabetic, not insulin dependent, and did not take his medication, cell phone, or his wallet with him that day. He is a man of smaller stature and speaks primarily Spanish, but does know enough English to get by. If you have any information regarding Jesus Rivera Sr.'s disappearance, please contact the Big Bear Police Department at 909-866-0100, case 05-355, number 5. Colin Gillis, 18-year-old Colin Gillis, was last seen on March 11, 2012. He was last seen walking on State Route 3 between Tupper Lake and Piercefield. These locations are in the Adirondacks in New York. After spending time with friends at a house party on Pascungame Road, Colin left around 1:30 a.m. and began walking down a dark highway in his small hometown of Tupper Lake, New York. Colin was last seen walking near the area of Setting Pole Dam Road on Route 3. A passing motorist reported a suspicious person to the Tupper Lake Police Department, who fit Colin's description. When police arrived, less than 40 minutes later, a state trooper checked the area and no one was found. When Colin did not come home the next day, his family and friends began searching. State Police and New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation were called in that evening, around 5:30. Before he went missing, he had returned from college while on break. Colin, a pre-med student, was home from studying at SUNY Brockport the night of his disappearance. Searches for Colin were launched by park rangers and the state police. Military helicopters from Fort Drum and more than 1,000 volunteers were also utilized in the search efforts. During these intensive searches, his driver's license and his tobacco pipe were eventually found, but no trace of Colin was ever found. If you have any information regarding Colin Gillis's disappearance, please contact the state police, 508-897-2000 on. Number 4. Michael Feisery. 51-year-old Michael Feisery was reported missing when he did not return home from a 4-day hike. On June 15, 2005, Michael, an avid, experienced hiker and backpacker, visited the north side of the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir in Yosemite National Park for a solo hike. He had planned this hike to take him to Rancheria Falls, Tiltil Mountain, Lake Vernon, and then through Beehive before returning back to the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir. At some point during the day, he decided to begin walking to the north up to the Pacific Crest Trail towards Tiltil Mountain. His family became concerned when he did not return. By June 19th, 4 days after Mike went on his hike and when his wilderness permit expired. On June 21st, they called the Park Service and an intensive search of the area around the reservoir and Pacific Crest Trail was launched. However, all that was found was a backpack near Tiltil Mountain just off the trail containing a topographical map, a camera, and a bottle of water. The search and rescue operation involved personnel from 5 counties with aircraft and tracker dogs. Apart from the pack, nothing else was found. Nearly 15 years later, Michael remains missing. If you have information regarding the disappearance of Michael Feisry, please contact Hetchy Ranger Station at 209-379-1928. Number 3. George Pensa, 30-year-old George Penka, disappeared on July 17, 2011 while hiking at the Upper Yosemite Falls in Yosemite National Park. And gray-blue running shoes. He was carrying a blue cloth bag and some limited food and water. Initial search efforts began that same evening, and a full-scale search and rescue operation was initiated on Saturday morning, June 18th. Around 105 search and rescue personnel from around the state were deployed, helicopters and 6 search dogs including Yosemite National Park Search and Rescue, Inyo County, Mono County, Mariposa County, Marin County, Fresno County, Tuolumne County, China Lake, Los Angeles County, Nevada County, Sierra Madre, Yosemite Search and Rescue Dog Teams, Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, and California Explorer Search and Rescue. On June 23, 2011, search efforts transitioned to a limited continuous search. After nearly 1 week of extensive searching, park rangers did not find any clues as to George's whereabouts. In nearly 9 years since George vanished, none of his belongings have turned up, and George remains missing. If you have any information regarding George Penka's disappearance, please contact the National Park Service at 888-653-0009. Number 2. Stuart Isaac, 48-year-old Stuart Isaac, was last seen in mid-September 2010, when he parked his black 2009 Lexus IS250 sedan at Craig Pass, 8 miles east of the Old Faithful Geyser on Yellowstone National Park's Grand Loop Road in Wyoming. Craig Pass is at an elevation of 8,262 feet, 2,518 meters, and Isa Mountain Pass, located on the Continental Divide. The small Isa Lake is located just west of the pass on the Grand Loop Road and is noted for striding the Continental Divide and draining into 2 different watersheds, the Atlantic via the Missouri River and the Pacific via the Snake River. Stewart's car was found abandoned during a routine patrol of the parking area on the evening of September 26th by the National Park Service. A search was started immediately, but repeated ground and air searches failed to find any clues or any sign of him. One of Stewart's former high school classmates, Matsue Evans, spoke to Stewart on September 24, 2010 at around 6:30 p.m. her time in Guam, which would have been about 3:30 a.m. in Maryland. She said that this last 2-hour phone call, during which Isaac said he was on his way to Yellowstone, was kind of odd. I was kind of surprised to hear from him because he seldom made calls. We text each other and we do email. Now I know that he's missing. Why would he call me 2 days before something happened? Stewart was not an experienced hiker or outdoors. Man, why did he decide to go to the Yellowstone National Park that day in September 2010? A hike that went wrong or something more sinister? Unfortunately, there was a little coverage of this missing persons case in the media, and Isaac's remains missing. If you have any information regarding Stuart Isaac's disappearance, please contact Yellowstone National Park's 24-hour Communications Center at 307-344-7381. Number 1. Thomas Seibold. 31-year-old Thomas Seibold went missing in the Alaska wilderness during a solo adventure near the end of September in 2012. Thomas traveled to Alaska in June 2012 to put years of survivalist training into practice in the state's backcountry. A native of Germany, Thomas had spent the previous 6 years teaching and training at Three Rivers Drum Outdoor School, a survivalist school that teaches Native American values along with weather forecasting, shelter building, and primitive hunting and gathering techniques. He spent much of his time under the tutelage of the school's founder, Tamarack Song, who described Seibold as a very experienced outdoorsman and a wandering spirit. To make the trip to the Arctic, Seibold had taken a 6-month leave of absence from the outdoor school. Thomas began his trip at an Alaskan native fish camp in the southeastern part of the state, and from there traveled north along the Tanina River, near Fairbanks, all while living on the land. By September 2012, Thomas had arrived in the northwest Alaska village of Ambler. From there, he trekked about 30 miles up the Ambler River to the cabin home of a woman his mentor at the outdoor school had put him in touch with, and her 13-year-old son. On September 27th, Thomas said goodbye and headed off into Gates of the Arctic. That was the last time he was ever seen. He was expected to be back in touch between the end of October and the beginning of November, with November 10th being the cutoff date to catch his flight back to Wisconsin on November 15th. It is clear that something happened which prevented Thomas from following his plans of trekking 30 miles to the town of Kobuk, where he would take his plane back to Fairbanks and then on to Wisconsin. Alaska State Police were alerted on November 11, 2012, when he failed to show for the flight, and they quickly focused their search near the confluence of the Ambler River and Ulanic Creek, where they believe Seibold may have built a base camp. Searchers immediately launched a search and were initially confident in finding him, as he had camped alone in extreme northern wintertime climates before, including reindeer hunts in Norway, in minus 25-degree temperatures. Thomas was highly trained in primitive survival skills, including building snow shelters, ice safety, making fire, and orienteering without map or compass. Troopers found Thomas's diary in the cabin, and the last entry was October 7th, where he stated he was preparing to go on a several-day exploration. The troopers found no evidence of him being at the cabin after that approximate date. In it, he described his hiking and camping higher up in the mountains, exploring for a potential campsite. He also talked about cleaning and preparing wood at the cabin for the colder weather ahead, which suggests that he was planning to return to the cabin. The SAR, search and rescue team, inspected the cabin and found that he had taken most of his gear, including at least one .22 caliber rifle and enough meat and provisions to last him a while, but found no sign to guide them to his whereabouts. Due to the severe weather conditions, 23 degrees F, the short daylight hours and remoteness of the area, the search faced logistical big issues in getting planes to the target areas. Snowmobiles were not able to be used in the search because there were only 3 inches of snow on the mountainous terrain at the time. On November 20th, the Alaska State Troopers put everything into one last effort to find Thomas. Up until then, they have been flying a 2-seater Super Cub, a slow-flying plane which was ideal for the valleys, but it had trouble negotiating the winds in the highlands, which is where Thomas was drawn to. They used a Piper Navajo, a 6-seater, so they can put 4 or 5 spotters up in the air. After 3 days of searching, one plane found a circle drawn on a gravel bar far up the Ambler River, 8 miles north of Ulanic Creek. They landed and checked out whether it could be the O from SOS, yet found no indication that the circle was connected to Seibold. Thomas could have made the sign for himself to mark a place where he left provisions. Because the circle has such strong meaning to Thomas, it seems more than possible that he etched the sign. The plane returned to the site a day later to explore the surrounding area for more clues and to take photos. After 6 flights over 13 days, the troopers suspended their search on November 24th as temperatures hit minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit. But the task was taken up by family and friends after they had read about successful rescues of others who survived in Arctic conditions for up to 49 days without food, equipment, or training, and Thomas had at least some of all 3. The family and friends contracted privately with 2 of the bush pilots previously employed by the troopers. If you have any information regarding Thomas Seibold's disappearance, please contact Alaska State. Troopers Kotzebue Office 907-442-32222, so there were 10 more unsolved national park disappearances. As we continue this series, we will be sure to update you on these cases if and when updates are available. If you have a case you would like to see featured, please email us at disappearanceofvigmail.com. When discussing these cases in the comments, please treat each case and the opinions of others with respect. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.